Welcome into the Dad Verb podcast, episode 6. Dad Verb podcast is a place where we chat about parenting from the lens of a dad. My name's Andrew, and I'm joined by my friend Ben Brown. How you doing, Ben?
Good.
Week's been good. Baby's been good.
Yeah, we are in week. Oh gosh, she just turned 3 weeks on Friday.
Fast, man. Coming up on a month.
Yeah, we're coming up on a month already. It's wild. But she is developing. She's changing every day, and we are in the thick of dealing with a toddler who is learning how to be a sibling. So we can get into that a little bit further. But it's been a very interesting week as a dad for sure.
A couple behavioral things that are cropping up.
Yeah. Lots of challenges for both us and for the kids. So, looking forward to talking about that for sure.
I'll poke you about that. But before I kind of get into my little week catch up, let's talk about what we're going to be talking about on the episode today. So, TikTok, they implemented a new time limit for users under 18. So obviously, that correlation between social media and kids can be concerning. And TikTok is trying some things. So we'll highlight that. And then there are new insights into how nurturing fathers impact the lives of their children. We'll dive into that topic, and then we'll round it out about discussing how our relationships change after kids. So that's what we have on the dock today. But catching up with you on my end of things, listen, I might not have the energy and enthusiasm this week. I'm pretty under the weather. But we're making it work. We're going to be trying here. But I am happy. I am 2-0 as a coach to my son's soccer team for U6 soccer. So we ended last season undefeated. We're starting the season off on a very strong note. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Awesome.
And it was my son's birthday yesterday. So we got to celebrate him turning 6. And this is episode 6. So all the vibes are good. It's been fun.
Wild.
We weren't going to record a podcast because I was going to be on a spring break vacation. We were going to take our son down to San Antonio, have some fun. But the family that we were going to go with, they had a stomach bug. So we pushed it out a few days. Of course, the kids and sicknesses.
Avoid that.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So stomach stuff I can't do. And yeah. So anyway, during the birthday things, my sister-in-law came, and what my sister-in-law does, she's a little sus, right? When my sister-in-law comes and her kid is sick, the kid is coughing, and she always pretends like, oh my gosh, like what he's coughing so much, like what's happening? I'm like,
I always blame it on allergies.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just I'm pretty sure he's just got allergies. It's fine.
And here's my golden rule. It's never allergies, right? It's always a cold, right? So I'm like, you don't have to beat around the bush. I know you're sick. And sure enough, I got sick. So I'm really hoping this dissipates that before we have to leave on Wednesday to go down for our little spring break trip. But yeah, I'm a little under the weather. A lot of people are just fighting bugs all around us right now. But I told you a couple weeks back, like I'd be surprised if we went multiple weeks of this podcast without recording some sort of sickness between either me or you.
Yeah.
So 100%. Right now it's me.
Yeah, I think it was, I want to say it might have been us last week. I know it was us the week our daughter was born. Dude. Our son got violently sick the night before we were supposed to leave for the hospital.
Oh gosh. Dude, really? Oh man, yeah. Pregnant and sick. Gosh. Yeah. It's tough, man. Yeah. Again, one of the toughest things about being a parent, getting sick when being a parent and still having to keep up with all the demands of fatherhood or parenthood. It's not easy.
I applaud you for attempting to avoid the stomach virus. Though I've had 2 this year, both from my son from daycare, and they were, just brutal. 48 hours of just hugging a toilet and feeling run down. And of course the little ones recover so much faster than you do. Yeah. So it's while you feel terrible, they're up and sprinting around, and all of a sudden, they're ready to eat and they're ready to have fun. And you still gotta be a parent at the end of the day, even though you feel absolutely terrible. So more power to you. Hope you get through this week unscathed and get to enjoy your vacation.
We'll see. So to kick things off, do you want to chat a bit about TikTok and what's going on with them right now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, read an article earlier today. I'm sure anybody who's involved in social media or has, a TikTok account or has any finger on the pulse of the news. This is kind of all over the place where, TikTok says they're implementing a new time limit for users under the age of 18. So it's a really interesting conversation because TikTok in and of itself is, such a massively successful app. But from what we understand of it, there are sort of different versions of TikTok that exist depending on what country you're in, right? So TikTok is owned by a Chinese-based company, apparently, and obviously we don't have access to this necessarily, but from reporting, we're seeing, the version in China is more educational. They're showing like science videos and things that are, helping kids develop into sort of productive members of society, right?
Reportedly.
Reportedly. Now, again, we're not behind that wall, so this is all secondary information.
Sure.
But in the US, I mean, any of us that open TikTok know what's on there, right?
13-year-olds dancing.
Right. You see a bunch of kids dancing around. You see, generally kind of like controversial content. You see a lot of, generally highly sexualized content, even if that's not the stuff you follow. You go to your For You page and like, if you're a male and you're on TikTok, like you're going to see, somebody shaking their butt on the internet. Like it's just, that's what's being served up by their algorithm, depending on your age and your gender. And so, there's no argument that I think getting into some of these social media platforms where you can just scroll and scroll and scroll and consume and consume and consume for, endlessly, right? Because there's millions of hours of video being uploaded at any given time to a platform like TikTok is going to be detrimental to kids of, people who do not have fully developed brains yet, right? Which anybody who's 18 or who has been 18 knows, you're not making the best decisions. You're easily influenced by things. You may have, you're still developing your view of yourself, your view of your body, anything like that. And so anything that can be done to kind of limit the impact of that, I think is important. And so with TikTok's announcement, it was interesting because they're trying to position this as, hey, we're protecting the kids, right? We're keeping them from doom scrolling and just sort of getting sucked into this vortex of content consumption. Right. But it's really interesting kind of how they're doing this. So in reading this article, I want to get your opinion on this, Andrew, but it doesn't look like the controls that are being put in place are necessarily going to be that impactful, right?
Right.
So they're saying that there's going to be a 1 hour time limit for those under 18, right? So the goal is to keep them on the platform for a certain amount of time and then get them off. However, it looks like the way that they're doing that is simply by popping up a message.
Yeah.
You can kind of think of this as like, Netflix when you're sitting there watching a show for hours and it'll ask you if you're still watching and you have to actually consciously, click a button to continue it. Yep. This is kind of along the same lines where it's going to say, you've reached your time limit for TikTok. And it will say, do you want to continue? And teens can then sort of bypass this warning. So the idea, I guess, is that they have to make a conscious decision to continue scrolling.
Right.
And I kind of want to get your thoughts on this, right? Because 67% of American teenagers are using TikTok and 16% are saying they use it constantly.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how this is kind of impacting kids? And do you think that this type of approach is going to do anything to keep kids, really from just getting sucked into these platforms and staying on them?
Right. So honestly, I don't think that this is really going to have any sort of effect because, at the end of the day, if a kid wants to do something, they're going to go and do it. They're going to find a way to do it. Like kids who you have to meet a certain age limit to even have a TikTok account. But of course, they're going to find ways to, create an email and lie about their age and get whatever content that it is that they're going to want to get. They're going to be able to find it. So I feel like this seems to more be I feel like the catalyst for this was more of, I guess, a political kind of a thing, because as you may have heard, TikTok is constantly in the media about whether or not it's even going to continue to exist as a media platform in the United States. There's ongoing legislation about whether or not this thing should be banned outright. So I think this is probably more of a political step to say, like, hey, this is what we're doing to try and shield kids from content. But ultimately, it's not, it's what I kind of equate it to is in Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is a really fun, active thing, but what a lot of people were doing was they were playing it when they were driving, which is incredibly dangerous because you have to like really be looking down at your phone to like spin the ball and catch Pokemon. You really have to be looking. And there was this prompt that can tell, or there's this, it was able to tell whether, how fast you were going. And if you're going 60 miles an hour on a freeway and you're playing, it's like, hey, are you driving? And you're certainly in a driver's seat. And you're like, nope, not good. And then you click through the prompt and you just keep playing. You do your thing. And that's basically what this is. This is a prompt to say like, hey, your time's up. Cool. Yeah. Are you going to keep going? Are you going to stop? And obviously, if you're a kid who's just well ingrained into this, that's fully, who wants to consume whatever content you're going to want to consume, they're just going to click through. So honestly, to your question, what's the efficacy of this? I really don't think that there really is going to be one. Whether or not the company actually cares, I don't know. Because ultimately more views equals more money, From a political perspective, they're trying to check the boxes and look good.
Yeah.
And this is what they have to do.
The controls.
Right.
Yeah, they're checking their controls, and obviously anybody that follows the news, they're catching a lot of heat. I think as of right now, the White House issued a sort of mandate that all federal agencies remove TikTok from any federally owned smartphones or devices within 30 days. So they're already at the sort of government level removing this app from their devices, which is probably smart, right? Like we probably don't want TikTok sitting on a bunch of federal workers' phones that possibly have access to sensitive data or whatever it is.
Sure.
This is something that's kind of come up time and time again around what are our kids being exposed to? What is that algorithm sort of pushing to them? And I can't remember. I don't know if you have this stat in front of you, but there was I remember hearing a data point recently about how many kids sort of shifted from when they were asked, what career they wanted. Shifted from like, doctors and lawyers and firefighters and all this to like wanting to be TikTok influencers, which is a very significant amount among, I think it was either, Gen Z or even sort of the younger end of millennials, right? Folks who were, looking at saying, this is what I want to be when I grow up, right? Like I want to be a TikTok influencer.
Yeah.
And that I remember hearing that, and it kind of struck me as just like, if you, like what happened? Like how did we get here? And maybe that's really like the 35-year-old, like old man millennial in me now.
Yeah.
Of just like, I don't necessarily understand it. I understand that there's a lucrative business model behind it, but it's like trying to get into the NBA, right? Like there's such a small number who are going to make a tremendous success out of being on these platforms. Yeah. And the reality is most people are not going to generate any money or a livable wage from this. And so, do you dedicate all of your time and mindset and resources to doing that? Or, is that really a viable career choice?
That is so, I'm familiar with that data point that you mentioned. I don't remember where I read it from. And I saw a different, I guess, a variant of that where a bunch of children were polled in, of course, China, about like what their aspirations were for their future and what they hope to be. And I think majority of the answers were along the lines of astronaut, physicists, doctors, things that are reputable, while specifically American youth were TikTok content creators, YouTube content creators. And it's sad. And this is me coming from, my career, I'm a video content creator on YouTube, and being on that side, I can tell you how much of a grind and how difficult it actually is, because you are doing more than just like, creating that dopamine hit for your audience, right? For, creating content, those videos. There's so many things on the back end that are just not sexy, and I'm not going to get into it right now because but it's extremely difficult as a business owner. And there's the taxes and the accounting, the monthly bookkeeping, and like, the unsexy thing of like, okay, we have to we have to consolidate our books here, and we have to
it's definitely not something that's easy.
And oddly enough, I just saw a report this morning on the Today Show about how a couple colleges are now adopting social media influencers as like a course, as like a class, as a major.
Jeez.
And it's an actual thing. Like just today, go on to the Today Show or today.com. We were recording this on March 6th. That's when it was reported. It was so interesting, but it's sad. And, I kind of, it's discouraging. So, the best that we can do as dads is just continue to, encourage our kids to chase dreams beyond the superficiality of what we see on TikTok. And for the record, I will say, I can't stand TikTok. That's the one platform that I'm not actively on because I'm so focused on YouTube and I guess Instagram, right? Right. And like TikTok, if you build your entire career on TikTok and all of a sudden the government comes through and they're like, all right, it's all banned, like there goes your entire business model. You don't actually
evaporates.
Exactly. You don't actually own a business. You're just you're subject to a platform, which is why you have to diversify. And I don't think kids who are 13 understand that concept. They're just like, oh, okay. So, what do you do with all this money? Are you just spending it and building a team, or like, are you investing it into a Roth IRA and diversifying and investing? And there are things that go beyond the social content creation.
You see how many influencers have had to reinvent themselves as platforms have changed, right?
Yeah.
And I think even beyond that, the thing that I think concerns me the most, and again, I think this is kind of this 1 hour limit is kind of a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, right? Like you're not solving the root issue, and what we're not addressing are the sort of the psychological impacts of being engrossed in social media and having that develop your worldview.
Well, here's the thing, though.
It's so easy to get that. Yeah, go ahead.
Why all this discourse specifically toward TikTok, though? Is it just because it's Chinese owned? Like, the effects of social media are just as prevalent through Instagram, through Facebook, and it's. I mean, well, let me read this right here.
They're not owned by a rival nation.
Exactly. I think that's where a lot of this conversation is coming from. But the effects are the same. There's a study by the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology that says that there is a casual link between the use of social media and negative effects on well-being, primarily depression and loneliness. And there's an actual chart that shows as media consumption, social media consumption increases, so does the rates of depression and suicide, particularly in teen girls. Wow. It's a very sad statistic. So does this 1 hour limit, is it going to do anything? Probably not. Right. Is it at least some sort of step in the right direction? Sure. Should it be adopted by Instagram? I mean, why not? Has it not? I don't know that Instagram has anything like that because there are a lot of young people on that platform as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, the only option at that point is, using screen time limits or, setting those sort of passcodes and using the available software limitations that exist on your smart device. But, there's ways around that if the PIN code or the passcode. Like, it's not that hard to get around any of this.
No, and these kids are getting smart.
Right. And to your point, the larger conversation is not about TikTok, right? Okay, TikTok is making a step. It happens to be in kind of the zeitgeist right now. Like, everybody's talking about it because of the sort of multiple seemingly possibly nefarious things that are happening behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is like, this is happening on every social media platform that exists, right? The goal is to get you to stay on their platform as long as possible, because that's how they're going to generate ad revenue. That's how they're getting eyeballs. That's how influencers are driving traffic to sites. And we get that it is a part of a business model, but at the end of the day, there should be more than likely, there really should be limitations on people with sort of these developing brains that can be easily, and whether it's positive or negative, they can be easily influenced to, feel bad about themselves, feel bad about their position in life. I know I've scrolled through Instagram and looked at somebody's snapshot of their lifestyle and said,
Yeah.
man, you know what? What am I doing with my life? Like, why am I not there?
Yeah.
Why am I not at that position in my life yet? And it's like what you're looking at is a highlight reel of somebody's life and taking that as their entire reality. And like you said, they don't see the grind. They don't see just, for you to build the following that you have with Dad Verb, like that takes so much work and effort behind the scenes to turn that into a fully fledged business. And it's the same thing, with most of these influencers. You might see the influencer as the face, and generally there's a whole team of people behind them. There might be an agency that manages them. There might be someone who's helping them create the right content, doing the research to figure out what's the trend that you're going to create next? What's the trend that's happening right now that you need to glom onto to keep your popularity rolling? And then what happens when that falls off? Like when your popularity takes a dip, you see this with some influencers when they fall off, like what happens next? Your revenue dries up. Like are you spinning into depression, at that point, because you're not at the forefront of being popular anymore.
Right. It's, it's really sad to me because, or not sad. What's the right word? I guess just difficult for me as a dad, because right now a lot of kids are chasing superficiality. And like you said, they are really wanting the followers for, people ask me like, hey, like, what are some tips to like grow on YouTube or whatever? I'm like, finish this sentence. You should follow me because blank. A majority of young people can't finish that sentence. Is it because I look pretty? Is it because it's usually going to be some sort of superficial answer because I want the followers, because I'm funny. I want to make you laugh. Those aren't real reasons. Exactly. Right. So it's like
you're chasing validation. You're chasing external validation. That's the idea that, like, one of the things we try with our son, and that we've tried to change our like language and mindset, is, and it's a little thing, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, but if he does something good, right, or does something that we want to reinforce as a positive behavior, what we're trying to do is change our language. Instead of saying, I'm proud of you, which we say to him all the time, like, I am proud of him when he does X, Y, or Z, right? He helps out. He helps bring groceries in or whatever. Like, he's 2. There's only so much he can do, but having him be engaged with the family is great. Yeah. But we're trying to change that from I'm proud of you to you should be proud of yourself. So you contributed to the family. You did something that, you learned how to use scissors. You should be proud of yourself. And try to drive that sort of like internal validation of like, I accomplished something and I should be proud of that. Right. So you're not looking as much for that external validation of, I need someone else to tell me that I did a good job so that I know that I'm okay as a person. Right. And that's kind of what I feel like people sort of chase when they're saying, I want to be an influencer just to get the attention, right? It's that external validation that fills some sort of gap in their life.
And to dovetail that, I think another, mindset shift that needs to happen, especially with the youth, is, it's give me the likes, give me the laughs, give me the views, right? Right. But really, we're losing the concept of giving and being charitable. Serving people is ultimately what I want to be, what my children to be. I want them to be good servants. And we are just not breeding those kinds of kids right now. We are breeding consumption and give me, as opposed to how can I help you? How can I serve you? And that's really a mindset shift that, as my son just turned 6, as he's really coming into an age where bigger concepts are going to be landing really soon. That's one thing I'm really wanting to hit home, is how can you serve others rather than how can the world continue to serve you and grow your own self-interests?
That's a really great point. I think that's, that's why we have these conversations. That's why, Dad Verb exists. That's why these things have been created is to serve others
Right.
in a way that we were looking for.
Right. And I'll be completely honest. When I first started Dad Verb, it was a vlogging channels because I wanted you to watch me because I'm an editor and I can make videos. Yeah. But it wasn't until later I like made content to like review and help make buying decisions about strollers or whatever, where I was like, oh man.
And when did
no one's speaking to dads?
Off?
And this is how.
When did your channels take off?
My channel popped. Everything pops at one point, right? My channel popped when I made a review of the Owlet baby monitor.
Right.
And it was the first video where I helped someone. Others.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you decided to help people and people said, okay, this is what you're about.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think actually what you just talked about with Henry and, saying, trying to kind of guide him in the right direction, I think brings us to our next topic that we wanted to talk about was the idea of why children need nurturing fathers. Mm-hmm. I think we talk about this in our discussions quite a bit about how we raise our kids and how, I think we as dads try to be our best, right? And to not necessarily just fulfill the sort of societal traditional gender roles, right? Of like, dad goes out and wins the bread and then mom's at home taking care of the kids and sort of never the two worlds shall meet, right? Like mom does all the kids stuff. I do all the work stuff and nobody, we're kind of two ships in the night when it comes to, engaging with the family. But I read a really interesting essay in the Wall Street Journal, over the last couple of days. And it was around why children need those sort of nurturing father figures. And it had some really interesting statistics around the outcomes for kids who have these engaged nurturing fathers. And I want to read this, this really important highlight. It says, though many more mothers are also providers today, research suggests that fathers still lag behind as responsive caregivers. A soon-to-be published survey of more than 1,600 teenagers by the Harvard Education School's Making Caring Common project found that almost twice as many 14 to 18-year-old boys and girls feel comfortable opening up to their mothers, 72%, as to their fathers, 39%, about anxiety, depression, or other mental health challenges. So what that says to me is, right, like traditionally moms are seen as the compassionate caregivers, right? The safe harbor. Yeah. So I have feelings I need to deal with. I have emotions I don't know how to handle. Who do I talk to? I talk to my mom. And I think as we meet more and more dads who are kind of, I think, like-minded, we're seeing that start to shift, where, dads are really getting involved in talking about emotions and talking about, how they feel, what they're afraid of. Even our last podcast episode, right? We talked about, some fears that we had. Traditionally, dad is not supposed to talk about the things that he's afraid of. He's supposed to be the rock for the family. But this sort of idea of nurturing fathers who are involved in raising the kids, involved in talking about complex emotions and feelings and thoughts sort of behind the scene, instead of just saying, oh, everything's going to be fine. I'm okay. Tough it out. Everybody's good. Yeah. Has a tremendous impact on kids and their overall mental and psychological well-being. So I want to pass it over to you and just, kind of, because it seems to me to be kind of sort of the driving message behind a lot of what happens on Dad Verb and on your channels. So kind of what are your thoughts on this, and how does this impact, or how does this factor into how you father your children?
Dads opening up, being emotional, talking about their feelings, that certainly has been stigmatized. But there is 100% a positive impact on your children and raising your children when you are able to open up to them on a deeper level, as maybe mom would. Now, I'll be fully honest, like I am very guilty of sometimes like my kids coming to me and they're hurt or whatever, and I'm just like, dude, get up, tough it up, you're fine, move. Mom does not react like that, right? But and I have done that for sure. But there are other times where I have knelt down and I've empathized with them, which is not something that dads did in generations past. And I said,
Right.
man, that boo-boo hurts, huh? That sucks. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, bud. That hurts. Come here, man. Tell me about how this happened, and really opening up on that emotional level. That's doing something to them. And I do want to say something real quick. The guys who are listening to this podcast, who are watching this on YouTube, you guys are amazing. You guys are taking the time to listen to this about dads talking about feelings and how they parent, right? That's not a thing, right?
Yeah.
But you are the top percentile of dads who want to be engaged and involved, and I applaud you for that. And I'm so grateful that this community of dads is growing slowly, but it is growing through Dad Verb. And we are going to be raising more empathetic children, children who, like I mentioned, are going to be servants as opposed to takers. And I think us being involved, that has a massive impact. I was at a recent get together, and there was one guy who I just don't like him. There's some people I just don't like, but there's
don't vibe.
Yeah. So his daughter was crying and he was just like ignoring her, trying to talk with his boys or whatever. Anyway, at one point I was just like, man, you gotta pick up your kid. And eventually he does pick up his kid, and he hands her off to his wife, and he's like, yeah, she's gonna need a bath when she gets home. And I'm like, what is that? You're not gonna you don't do that. You're not gonna do
any of that.
You don't give your kids a bath. You're not gonna step up and handle that. If so
right.
There's this, I don't know, I wouldn't say he's a deadbeat dad, but just that whole concept of a deadbeat dad, an uninvolved dad, one who doesn't want to step up, that's laziness. Okay. Well, I get that you've worked. I've worked. I'm sick. I worked all day. Still had to do all the things, X, Y, Z. I'm stepping up. You got to do the same, man.
Yeah. I just got done giving my kid a bath tonight. It's such a, I want to touch on this too. So one of the experiences that I had, even just today, right? So I think one of the most important things we can do as parents, especially as our dads, especially as our kids are little, is baby wearing, right? Like I wore my son everywhere in just a front carrier. Yeah. I wear my daughter everywhere, when we're kind of out and about. If I have the ability to do it, I just put her in the carrier and I wear her out when we're running errands, or even just doing stuff around the house. And we were in Costco today, just walking around, grabbing some stuff for the house. And I will not tell, it had to be at least 4, 5, 6 times that I was stopped by other women in Costco or heard them commenting of just like, I heard one woman walk by and said, it's really nice to see a dad involved in the raising of their kids. And I was just like, how is this not a thing? Like, how is this a surprise that a dad is like, that I want to? And it's not because my wife is saying like, oh, my back hurts, you need to carry the kid. Like, yeah, she did just have a C-section. I'm doing my part to like make sure the kids are taken care of. But, I do it because I want to. And because I think it's important for my kids to know that I play as big of a role as mom does in their upbringing and both their emotional safety and their physical safety, right? Like I want to know that we are connected on that level. Like even my son and I, we kind of touched on the beginning. He's having some behavioral issues. 1, he's a toddler. 2, he's got a new sibling. He's adjusting to life with another kid. And it's been really hard. I think in the beginning, like physically it's not that difficult, but like mentally it's just the juggling you have to do between the 2 kids is pretty exhausting. And so a lot of what's happening with him is, if he feels safe with me, like his outbursts happen with me. So for a while I was looking at this as like, well, why me? Why am I the one who takes the brunt of, he's mad, so he like wants to hit, or he's mad, so he wants to like yell and run around or whatever that is. And, the more we read about it, the more we realized that like when your kid feels safe with you, they will let their emotions kind of like just out because they know there's not a serious consequence for letting their impulses take over in it. 2, they have no impulse control.
Right.
And so, we had an incident the other night. We were actually going to record on Monday, I think, either Sunday or Monday. And, I texted Andrew and was just like, hey, can we just push this another night? Like, my son's having some emotional issues. I just want to make sure I'm there to help deal with it. And at one point we kind of, I had a talk with my wife. I was like really keyed up about the whole thing. I was like, I don't know how to handle this. Like, I don't understand why it's just me. Like, why is this my problem? I'm just getting really frustrated with him. And we ended up just like, my son and I, we like hopped in the truck. I put him in the back. We had to like get rid of some stuff from our back porch. And I was like, all right, you're going to come with Dad and we're going to go to the dump and get rid of these things. And on our way back, I remember I was talking with him, and I just turned to him and I was like, I know he's not really going to understand this, but he understands some of it. And I looked at him and I was like, hey buddy, I was like, I know we're having a hard time right now. I know there's a lot of change. And I said, Daddy was not dealing with his feelings very well. I was like, I was having a really hard day. I had a lot of feelings, and none of that is your fault. And like, I'm the grown up. I should be able to handle my emotions better than I did. And I remember he looked over at me and he like grabbed my hand. Literally, I mean, this is like, I wish I was like, like making this up, but he grabbed my hand and he looked over at me and he said, I had a hard day too. And I was just like, wow. Like, for a 2-year-old to look at me and say that, and I don't know that he really knows what that means, but it's that sort of connection to like, to your kid, to look at them and say like, you know what, I'm having a hard time, to show your kids that like, you're not perfect, and that you get frustrated and you get mad, but that you have a way of dealing with it in a healthy way, so that they can see that example and hopefully come out, better than you were. And, you just keep leveling them up, because that's how we impact future generations, right? Like, that's the biggest impact we can have in the world, is like raising better kids.
It's, you hit on something, and I think it's true. I think we all as parents default to this innate need to look flawless for our kids, right? Mm-hmm. We make all the right decisions, and you can too. Right. But the reality is, we make missteps, and you're going to make missteps. And I think the mistake is not addressing them or acknowledging them and saying, I did this, you did this, and it's tough. And I think it is a mindset shift that we as a society need to work on. I need to work on for sure. But it's what you're doing with your son. It's really cool to hear, because this is the building blocks to a really solid relationship. And potentially, like we talked about last week, if your kid is 16 and he and a friend got a little too drunk at a party, and then they call you, right? Are we happy that they made the decision to get themselves in a bit of a bind that's not very favorable? No, we're not happy with that decision. But the fact that they're open enough to call you, as opposed to fearing what you would do, instead trusting what you would do to help them get out of a situation, that's massive. That is a big win. And to foster that is to do what this article, the whole root of this whole conversation was being present, fostering a healthy relationship with your child, and not being overly critical in any sort of missteps that they may have along the way, being more empathetic to what certain situations are, as opposed to being dismissive. That is ultimately, the goal is to build a healthy relationship with your child. And I think empathy and feelings, right? The unmacho feelings is the key to that. One of my favorite comments that I've ever gotten on a YouTube video was, this video is is the cause for the pussification of the Western male. That's what they told me. And I ate that up. I was like, man, and here's the funny thing. I don't know if I talked about this before on the podcast, but that was a mom who commented that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I was just like, listen,
who didn't love you enough?
That, like, and it's funny because,
who didn't validate your feelings?
We got this course for, father figure, right? And, it's a business, right? You run ads on Facebook, and you get comments, and a majority of the comments are women tagging their husbands. Like, this is really cool. We're expecting you should get this. This is really cool. I'm like, awesome. And then there are a couple who are like, my husband would never do this. My man would never this and that. And I feel so bad. I'm like, I want to change that. Why would you not want to be involved? Why would you not want to baby wear? That whole comment that you got at the Costco, like, I've been doing it for 3 years now.
The surprising part is just like people looking at you and being so surprised. Like I had at Home Goods the other day, I had two older ladies behind the counter, and one of them looked at me and said, my husband would never hold a baby like that. He would just hand them back to whoever gave them to them. And I was just like, I mean, I guess that's a generational thing, but it's so sad. Dude, to know that like people just refuse. And I get it. Some people don't like to hold kids, and that's fine.
I don't like to. Yeah, I don't like to either. That's why I wear them. That's why I wear them.
Yeah, because they're like they get heavy after a while.
Yeah,
but like your own kid, like I don't know any way to make them feel safer or more connected to me than to wear them, to be there for them, to like admit that I have flaws, because I don't necessarily know that I saw that, growing up. Was like, I saw it from my mom because, I was raised by a single mother. I saw that from her, but even, I think in doing the best that she could, I think there were probably times that she didn't show me how she felt because she didn't want to burden me with the stress she was under, whether it was, financial or moving houses or whatever it was.
That's what we do.
As a parent, I get that, because you don't want to lay that on your kid, because you don't want to like steal their innocence, and lay the sort of heaviness on the world on them, because it'll get to them soon enough.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
We're going to go over time because of this, but I'm just curious. We were aiming for 40 minutes. It's not going to happen, man. I'm sorry.
No, we're at 41.
So I didn't know this about you. So you said you grew up with a single mom.
I did.
Has that impacted how you choose to parent and be involved with your kids?
100%.
How and why?
Yeah, so this is something I sort of ruminated on. I think before our first kid, I tried to journal a lot about it just to get my thoughts out, because I was very nervous that I was somehow, for some reason, going to freak out and like leave my wife and leave my kid, and because it would be too hard and I wouldn't be able to handle it. But yeah, for me, so, my mom and my dad were never married. It's just, it wouldn't have worked between them. I know that, having known my father, I didn't know who he was. It wasn't like, he was some stranger or anything like that. But he was never really in my life. He was kind of in and out of my life, lived in a different state, was more or less absent. I think that was probably due to like a lot of how he was raised and his family situation, which was definitely incredibly toxic.
Did you feel like you missed out on a couple of things because he wasn't as present in your life?
I think I did when I was younger. I know I struggled with it a lot when I was growing up, of like, I think a lot of kids, who have absent fathers struggle with this idea of, why doesn't my dad love me? Why doesn't my dad want to be around? Why doesn't he want to be a part of my life? I am very fortunate in that I had my grandparents. Like my grandfather was was the biggest probably male influence in my life. Hardworking blue collar guy, worked like 60, 70 hours a week, like logger, and took me out to like make sure I spent time outside. He made sure, like, he took me with him everywhere.
He wasn't a TikTok influencer?
No, he was not a TikTok influencer.
That's cool, man.
Permanently grease-stained hands, like that kind of guy. Yeah. Very salt of the earth people. And, he was a massive influence in my life, and my mom too. I mean, obviously my mom was a huge influence. But as far as like, sort of masculine energy, like that was my granddad. Like that was him. Figure. Right. He was my father figure for sure. Cool. And you're kind of getting back to your question. I think that when I go back and I really examine why it is I want to be involved in this way in my kids' lives, why I want to, make content for dads, to kind of support the people who want to pursue this, who want to pursue parenting their kids in this way is really probably mostly related to like, you know, my dad not being there and me really wanting to break that cycle of, you know, I'll be damned if my kids don't know that I love them and that I'm proud of them and that I would do anything for them. Like that's the type of relationship that I want. And I'm sure there's something I could talk to a therapist about for hours, hours and hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that drives a lot of my viewpoint on how I should be engaged as a father and what responsibilities I should take. Yeah. And I think that drives a lot of just my viewpoint and my mentality around how I want to raise my kids.
Maybe we can dive more into that in a different episode, but maybe we can round things out. And I do want to go back to one thing. Baby wearing is an absolute hack, okay? Beyond the benefits of, you know, bonding, emotional time, the closeness that you get to have, it is an absolute hack. Like my baby loves it, dude. Like they absolutely love it. They're quiet, they're calm, they're chill. I can get stuff done. So like, why wouldn't you want to do that?
Down right now, she does not want to be put down. But if we put her in a carrier, she's happy as can be. As long as she's not messy or isn't hungry, she's good. She'll sleep for hours while you walk around and do whatever you want.
Yeah. Now, is this podcast sponsored by Baby Bjorn? No, it's not. It's sponsored by nobody because we don't have anything. But
should be.
This is the spot. This is the ad read right here. This is it goes right here eventually one day. But yeah, to any guys out there, wear your babies, man. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing feeling, and I've been doing it for 3 years. So comments and looks, they don't faze me as much, but I got very similar looks and comments, especially back in 2017 when we had our first. So, what's fun though is I was wearing my daughter's a couple weeks back, and when you get the looks that are from other ladies that are thirsty, I'm like, yeah.
The thirsty
my family situation is good. Be jealous.
I told my wife earlier today. I was like, if you look around, I was like, if any single dude just like borrowed somebody's baby for a while and just wore them around Costco,
game over.
I was like,
dude.
First of all these ladies, I was like, you are way too late. I was like, if I'm walking around with a baby attached to my chest, like you've missed the boat.
Yeah, I'm
like,
sorry.
You're way past due on this.
Oh,
like, I'm fully committed.
Dude, inevitably you'll get at least one of those looks though. You're just like,
yeah, and you're gonna get them like mostly it's gonna be like, you know, older ladies. It's gonna be the older ladies. At least they were in Costco today.
Oh, that's hilarious, man. Well, let's round things out and let's chat about the impact of our relationships ever since having kids.
Yeah.
What do you have on that, man?
Oh, that is sorry, I just bumped my mic. I think it's hard to encompass all of the changes that happen. But you know, some of it is, you know, you don't have any time. So you know,
that was my struggle
about,
last episode.
You don't have any time. Yeah. I think once we had a kid, one of the biggest changes was the mechanics of your relationship, right? Because your time is no longer your own and your focus is no longer your own. Your energy for both of you, for the most part, and mom especially, is going into the baby. Mm-hmm. So you tend to, and I don't know if you experience this, and I definitely want to hear from you, like when the first probably 4 to 6 months of having our first kid, it felt like our relationship went into very kind of like we were both incredibly in love with our baby, right? Like we would like cry all the time. First of all, you're exhausted, your emotions are high, hormones are all over the place. Like you don't know what's up, what's down, you're confused, you're anxious. So like you would cry over just like how much you loved your kid, like just in the weirdest moments. But the relationship between like my wife and I became sort of almost business-like, right? Because you know, obviously you have the 6-week postpartum gap where like you can't have intercourse, like you know they're not supposed to use any like feminine products. So there's this huge gap in intimacy that happens during that 6 weeks. And then what doesn't get talked about is like, okay, you've hit that 6 weeks, you know, you get the all clear, whatever it is. that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the green light for you guys to be intimate again.
Dude, we have a whole
right.
class on this in our father figure course. And I think that's something that, as guys in particular,
right,
that's one thing that we struggle with the most is that aspect of things, because, you know, when you welcome a kid, a lot of your focus and attention is on your kid. Before, it was just you and your wife, you know, and it was great and dandy. But now there's this time split, and sometimes it feels kind of like transactional. Where it's, you know, like I'll handle this, you handle that, and it's just like kind of feels like work, you know.
Yeah. You go into business mode.
Yeah, 100%. And it gets really difficult. But the way that I feel like we can like really reconnect is, you know, we would play games. We love board games. We love card games. We do that. And that's like our way to like decompress. We would watch shows. We watch Netflix. And then another way a lot of couples reconnect and kind of build that bond back up is they have sex, right?
Right.
But at least in my case, dude, it was just lost. Like it was gone. And it's better now, but it's like, maybe it's a little TMI, but it's like, I found myself asking, like, do you even get like horny anymore? Like, do you still like me? Like this kid sucked everything out of you. And there's some moments where I kind of like resented
am I still attractive to my wife? Like that's
exactly.
and I think that's a normal, so if you're a husband out there and you're going through your first kid, it is not out of the realm of like, you're not weird if you're wondering if your like wife still finds you attractive. You know, you're going through a lot, you're tired, you don't have any energy. And I was listening to another podcast. I think I was actually listening to Man Enough on your recommendation kind of earlier today.
Fantastic podcast.
And fantastic podcast. And one of the points they were talking about was how intimacy develops in the mind of a woman versus a man, right? Like, so intimacy develops in a woman's mind in general from, you know, emotions, right? Like you do nice, like small, nice gestures. Like they were talking about like, you know, he made his wife coffee, or he did the dishes, or he did this, or he did that. And it was kind of all these small things. And that's how your wife, and I know for my wife, this is generally true. That's how she feels connected and appreciated by me, to and by me, right? Are those small gestures. Like I'll go to the store and like make sure I bring her home flowers, or I'll make sure I bring home, you know, I'll make her coffee when I make coffee, or
dude, you're hitting it on
do
the
those
head.
Small things. And those are the things that allow her to feel connected to me.
You were courting your wife. You would bring home flowers. You were courting her, and that goes out the window.
Right. It's knowing that I'm thinking about her. Right. Other than just like we're together.
You would send her a text, be like, "Hey, sexy."
Yeah. Like, "Hey, I love you. Like, I hope you're having a good day." Blah blah blah. Right. Now with men, it's kind of the opposite, right? So I know for me, when I feel valued and connected and loved by my partner, it's typically through physical intimacy. That's kind of like where it starts. Right. So with women, it's the emotional intimacy is followed by the physical intimacy. With men, it's the physical intimacy begets the emotional intimacy, right? Like I feel loved and connected when that happens. So what then happens when you have this 6-week gap? You have no energy. You have no time to think about your significant other than these sort of like business-like transactions. That's where those things kind of go out the window. And it's a real challenge to reconnect and to find each other again. And I think it was even, there was an interview with, I think it was Michelle Obama, who talked about the fact that like raising kids, she's like, I hated my husband. And this is the Obamas, right? They're like the poster child for like a great relationship. She was like, I hated my husband for 10 years. I couldn't stand the sight of him because we were in the middle of like raising our kids. And then it was after that we started to kind of find each other again. You know, and I've even talked to family members who are just like, you know, I get a chance to like go on a walk. Now that my kids are older, I get a chance to just like go on a walk with my wife, or like go to the store, or go do things together that we couldn't while we were in the throes of raising little kids who need you all the time. Yeah,
I was chatting with a couple family members, and we were just kind of talking about like just real talk that guys, frankly, should have more often. We talked about finances. We talked about how much they're putting each month into a 401k and a Roth IRA. Are they maxing out? Like we have like deep conversation. We're talking about how much we all make.
That's awesome.
You know, it was great. But another thing we talked about, we were like brainstorming, like, hey, how can we have more sex with our wives? You know, like that'd be great. You know, and
any tips?
Yeah, and I mean, you hit it on the head earlier. It was like one of us, their wife, like they opened up. They're like, "You stopped like courting me. You like used to buy me flowers. You used to text me. You used to do, you know, just little gestures, and those go out the window with kids. It's just because like I can't be bothered by that right now. Like I gotta change a poopy. Right. You know, it's you know all these things.
The important thing is keeping your kid alive, not dating your wife.
Exactly, but that's the thing that we guys, if there's some big takeaway that I hope to ingrain with guys throughout this podcast or Dad Verb YouTube content or our course content, is do not stop dating your wife. I remember doing like a live stream with guys from our course community, and like the biggest tip for new dads had nothing to do with their kids. It was everything to do with their wives. It was about building and maintaining a strong relationship with them, but also mitigating expectation, right? Just because you give them a massage doesn't mean that, okay, now we get to have fun, right? It's tough. You got to temper that expectation. And I want to read you these statistics real quick. This came from an Instagram account called Momwell. Erica Jasa, she's like she's a psychologist that deals specifically with postpartum women. Anyway, there's a really interesting poll that they conducted. I'm just going to read it. We asked 7,000 of you how much sex you were having in the first 2 years of your baby's life. Okay, here are the results, okay? 27.2%, so roughly a quarter, said a couple times a month. I wish I could have said that we were in there, but we weren't, right? Yeah. We were in the second highest category. Either. We were in the 20.1% that said once every few months. Okay. So right there, that's 47% of people said either a couple times a month, which is great, or once every few months, which is kind of where we were at, which is sad. But like, and this is after, you get the 6 week green light, but it's not 6 weeks, man. It's more like, maybe 8 to 10 where you can maybe start.
Right.
But this is asking about the first 2 years of a baby's life.
Yeah.
And then just real quick, 18.6% said weekly. And this is where I'm kind of like, man, that'd be great. But no, we're not there. But 18.6% said weekly. 14.4% said monthly. 13.2% said a couple times a week. 5.9% said once per year, which I've heard a couple of guys who are, that's tough. That's tough. And then the expectation that we have, right? The guys, the dream daily, every single day, 0.04%. That means of the 7,000, maybe 2 people said.
I think 0.04% of people are lying.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you has to.
What was the other one? Like 13 something percent. They were like a couple times a week. I'm like, to be honest, raising 2 kids, I don't think I physically have the energy for a couple times a week.
It's weird to say. I'm like, I'm tired sometimes.
I wish I could say, I wish I could say I did. But the reality is like, there are times I just like want to watch a show and shut my brain off and go to bed. Yeah, because
I'm the same way.
What we're in right now, is like, obviously we just had our daughter 3 weeks ago, but because of the change in our household, like our son, what they don't tell you is like now our toddler wakes up at 3:30 in the morning and comes in our room because he can't sleep or he's worried about something. So like, that's how he's handling it. His stress is he wakes up at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. He climbs out of bed and opens our door, what feels like the middle of the night, and goes, "Daddy, I'm awake." And I'm like, "Oh, cool, buddy. Come on in. Like, just come lay with us. Maybe you'll get a few more hours of sleep," which generally doesn't happen. So, that you not only have all this sort of emotional stress that's going on of like trying to figure out multiple kids or even your first kid. And then on top of that, like you have just the pure sleep deprivation of like, all right, let's say we go to bed at 11, then the baby's going to wake up at like 1:30 or 2 and need to eat, and then probably going to wake up around 3:30 or 4 again and also need to eat, have a diaper change, blah, blah, blah. Like, and that's if they get their 2-hour stretch and are not waking up, every hour to an hour and a half. Your body just starts to shut off after a while.
Yeah.
And I think, what was I reading? There's an interesting like biological, your wife's bodily hormones actually change. It's either during the last trimester or postpartum, but they change to actually drop your testosterone as a man. So it actually increases your prolactin levels and drops your testosterone to make you more ready and less aggressive, so that you can be a more empathetic father. So there are actually like physiological changes that happen to you to actually lower or inhibit your sex drive to make you essentially a better dad. And that's nature, right? I just read it and I can't remember where I saw it.
I know what you're talking about. There's a biological impact shift that happens. Oh gosh, I really want to find it and drop it in the in the show notes, because that is a fascinating read. When we're talking about this stuff, it's easy to kind of get siloed into like guys talking about guys, right? But again, a hard key to this is kind of like empathizing and really like understanding like what is going on through her mind, so that you can try to not necessarily troubleshoot things, because we always want to fix the situation or whatever, but at least just like get a better understanding of what or how she might be dealing with certain things. So I would recommend you guys checking out Momwell, which is MOMWELL on Instagram. She is a kind of a friend of mine. We've worked on a video or two together, and she has a lot of good insights about like women dealing with the invisible load, and what that means, and things that they may be going through that you didn't know. Oh, I just hit the mic. Things that your wife, your partner may be going through that you didn't realize, and it might open up some just new ideas or new viewpoints for you, because it's helped me to some extent. It's not something that I live and die by, but there's some stats where I'm like, I'm not alone. Okay, cool. Yeah. My wife is
it helps you understand.
Yeah, that the lack of understanding leads to frustration. And this is a good way to mitigate that.
I think that's I think, and you're actually you sort of made my segue for me, so that was perfect. Cool. I think it's one of the things that we really tried to focus on, or at least I saw was missing with our first kid, is trying to look at what my wife is doing from the viewpoint of gratitude, rather than what am I not getting, or what is not happening that I'm not happy with. I think those things need to be dealt with, but I think they're mitigated when I look at it and say, her body is literally keeping our child alive at this point. Like, it is producing food, it's producing appropriate hormones and antibodies and all these things to keep a kid alive. And to look at your partner and say, as much as I love this child, they were physically a part of her for 10 months. Like, they grew from her body. From her existence comes this. And trying to look at things from this sort of, almost like this perspective of awe, right? Like the awe of the experience of like the fact that, that we had a kid, that they're healthy, that they're being raised, that they're being, they're getting appropriate nutrition, that we live in a situation where, I'm not afraid of my kids starving. It's a tremendous, tremendous honor to be able to watch that and to support it in whatever way I can. And so it's like, do I need to like nag about this, that, or the other thing? Like, I really don't, and I probably shouldn't. It's not to say that I should ignore how I feel, or I should ignore, what my thoughts are. I should communicate those clearly,
right? But
I should also have appropriate expectations.
That's a good mindset to certainly keep, and I fully understand that when you're in the thick of it in the day to day, it's your emotion gets you sometimes. It's tough, but that is definitely a good thing to keep in mind. But the reality is that that's our stance. We are empathetic guys. We love being a part of the family, and we want to do what's best for our family. And And sometimes it takes some L's personally so that we can, just make some sacrifices. That's just what happens, whether it's sex or time or money. Yeah, dude. But the reality is, like, there's some guys out there who are listening to this and like, man, these guys are absolute just weak. This is weak. This is beta male stuff. And that's fine. That's just not a mindset that I share. That's just, I believe, we are the new generation that's going to be building strong young men, strong young women. And it's not going to be defined by, hey, rub some dirt on it and move on. It's going to be largely not defined. It's largely going to be aided by our ability to open up, share, empathize and be compassionate towards our kids as opposed to being forceful. So, that's 100%. All I've got. We're coming up on time. Do you have any final thoughts before we close out, man?
No, great conversation today. Really appreciate it. And again, I want to reiterate your message earlier to all the dads who listen to this, who are part of the Dad Verb community, who create content, consume content, about how to be better fathers. Is you guys are the ones who will change the world. Like, that's it. This community will change the world. We can leave no greater legacy and have no greater impact than raising the best, the next best generation that we can. That's it. That's all we can do.
There you go, guys. Thank you for tuning in. If you are listening to this on Spotify or Apple, we'd appreciate a 5-star review. Help spread the word. Help get this to guys who need it. If you are watching this on YouTube, feel free to comment down below. Give us a like and let us know what your thoughts are on this video, whether it's about the TikTok, about your relationship with your spouse, relationship with your kids, or anything that we chatted about. Please feel free to share those comments. I don't always respond to them. It's kind of tough for me to tackle a lot of things right now, but I do read them. I do read all the comments that hit my page. So please go ahead and do that. I'll be on spring break, going to San Antonio, and hopefully we're not sick. So we might be a little slow with an episode next week recording, but we'll be back really soon with episode 7. Until then, we love you guys. We appreciate your listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.